You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host, and today you will get to meet someone. If you haven't met him before, you might have seen him playing out somewhere because he is the lead singer of a group called the Dirt Deacons. His name is Keith Plunkett. He is not only a singer and musician, but has a wide-ranging background. He has been a political writer and a political philosopher, and if you keep up with him on social media, that political philosophy still creeps into his all aspects of his life. So Keith and I have known each other for 15, 17, 18, something like that years.
Close to 20. We'll call it 20. Yeah. It's been very close to that, absolutely.
And you bounced around from Flora to Yazoo County, back to Flora, but
from Bentonia originally, so just 10 miles down the road. I've always been played Little League ball here in Flora and hung out. I didn't go to Tri-County, went to Benton Academy, but so I was across the river, across into Yazoo County over there. But
so we're both Yazooans.
I grew up with all the folks here and there and yon, so around these parts.
So we're here to talk about today what is keeping you occupied on nights and weekends, and that is not only playing out and singing, but recording new music with the Dirt Deacons. But I got to ask you first, where does a name like the Dirt Deacons come from?
Well, it's I've been in several bands over the years, going back to my late teens, and it's one of those kind of things. I think most band names come about because you sit there and you try to come up as a bunch of guys sitting there trying to come up with a band name. You come up with sometimes the silliest thing you can possibly think of. You're all bantering back and forth, and nobody's really being serious. Is why don't we call it this, and why don't we call it this? The silly stuff. And you just do that at some point until nobody laughs, and everybody's like, okay, I might consider that. So write that one down. You keep going on, and you just settle on one like that. That's the way it's always been with me. That's the way we've always.
I don't know. Some bands just keep the silly name.
Right? Yeah.
What is it? The butt trumpets?
Oh gosh, you get into the whole punk thing and that kind of stuff, and it could get very silly. But the band that I played with back in the '90s, Billy Stick was the name of that group. We recorded an EP back in those days, but that all came about from a crazy camping trip where we're camped out around the fire, and this limb falls out and hits a buddy of mine like across the head, and
oh no,
yeah. So we're sitting there, and guys in their early 20s, if we're camping out, we're drinking beer and talking mess, and this limb falls out and everybody's laughing, and as soon as everybody gets their composure, it's like I feel like I've been hit in the head with a billy stick. There you go. There's the band. Silly. That's where it came from.
So you clean up the blood, and then you write it down somewhere.
No blood. He's hard. That's my buddy Chad Green. He's hard headed. It probably didn't even break the skin.
Now, I remember Billy Stick. You were competitors with Mr. Mojo back in the day, right?
Competitors? I would never say
colleagues. Well, like that.
Yeah. There were a lot of bands back in those days, but we, I was, we were all in our early 20s at that point, and having a good time, but never really took it seriously. I think we were writing music, and occasionally we would have this. I don't know. It's like, let's do this, let's do that. And we'd go to the studio and record some stuff, but nothing outside of us having our own music recorded and put on tape on a little EP that we could basically hand out. Matter of fact, we ordered back in those days, of course, you didn't have all of this digital stuff you have now and the easy way to stream and all of that. So you had an actual product that you ordered, and we ordered through disc makers or whatever it is up in Philadelphia area, and had these cassettes pressed with 5 songs on them. And I think Bryce Upshaw, our drummer, still has some of those boxes of actual cassettes because we just, didn't get rid of all of them. I mean, still shrink wrapped the whole, every bit of it. So.
Oh, that must be cool to actually, if you actually got a chance to go and see that, and see that box of them still sitting there.
Yeah. I mean, Bryce and Brad Chamley, our guitar player, they are the keepers of the memorabilia, I guess you would say. I've moved so much in the past, 10 years back and forth to different places. It's lucky that I can find anything. If it's not at my house now in a corner somewhere, it's probably in storage up in Yazoo City at the storage place, and so I'll find it eventually, maybe some of it, but and some of it we've got, but they keep up with a lot of that stuff and old tunes and that kind of stuff. Bryce has got a lot of stuff, and Brad's got a lot of stuff.
So how did you? Because we're going to get into how you recorded this latest single and how you guys are recording right now, but how did you do it back in the day with Billy Stick? Do you remember actually going into the studio? Was there a studio first? Because some people did this with a home machine. I did it with 4-track tape.
Yeah. Well, no, this was a studio deal. We went into the Terminal Studios. They were in Ridgeland then. Randy Everett and was the engineer behind that, and we went in and recorded those there at the Terminal, which does mostly Malaco Records. I mean, that's their go-to spot for recording a lot of that stuff in the Jackson, Central Mississippi area. So that's where that entire thing was recorded. So. It was a studio effort, big, you walk in and it's a board about as long as a truck and then all of that kind of stuff, which is, of course, mostly obsolete nowadays, when it comes to recording stuff. There's still those studios that do all of that and have all of that, but, you look at everything's gone to little bitty iPads and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a little device that I see advertised on Facebook. It's like a little box called Audigo.
Yeah.
And I see all these... I don't know, these kids, I hate to put it that way, but they're using these things and they're recording multi-tracks on their phones.
Yeah, it's, I know. You when you start using the term kids, you start aging yourself pretty quick there, Chris.
That's right. But, I've kept up with technology a little bit. I've got a little studio in my house where, if I get an idea or something, I can put it down. And I managed to actually work the buttons and use the technology. I surprise myself sometimes.
Technology has never been my thing. I mean, I know how to do what I do digitally, and I've actually, we were talking earlier about going back into the political stuff. I built websites back in those days, issue-oriented stuff. I was probably one of the first communications guys in 2011 to actually use Facebook as a real, political communications medium. It really wasn't. I mean, people were taking pictures of their sandwiches and sharing that kind of stuff on there back in those days. But I worked for Billy Hughes, who himself is also a musician, the mayor of Gulfport now. We didn't have nearly as much money as now governor, then running for lieutenant governor Tate Reeves had. So we had to find ways to communicate, to get in touch with people and get the information out there. And Facebook was one. I was one of the first political folks around here that started using it, but it wasn't because I foresaw some great thing coming on the horizon. It was simply because we didn't have the money to get the information out there nearly like the other ones did. So. I've kind of been on the forefront of some of that social media stuff. I say forefront, that makes it sound like I'm way out there, but I've bought into that early on in some of those cases, and that's helped a little bit with this doing promotion stuff with the Dirt Deacons in music now. But technologically speaking, when it comes to all the bells and whistles and just setting up sound when we go play places. That's not my forte. I just Brad and Bryce point and say, okay, take this over there now.
Now that brings up a question, because are you the stereotypical lead singer?
No, I am not. And look, all right, you touched on something. We got to have this conversation now. All right, so it's the stereotypical. I am there early most of the time. Well, on time. Not late most of the time, and I do my part. My job with the Dirt Deacons, when we're setting up our sound, a lot of places we go now, obviously that's already backline's all we have to take. But when we're setting up our own sound, it's become my responsibility to handle the lights. Of course, the guys always come behind me to make sure I've done everything correctly because of this stereotypical thing like singers can't do that kind of stuff, you know. I don't like that. I don't understand what this thing is about singers not unloading equipment. Where did this come from? And
it's been a thing that it goes around.
Meme. It's like a meme. So
Stevie Nicks doesn't set up the lights.
Well, of course not. Of course not. Yeah, David Cummings, a friend that's a drummer for plays for several different groups, but he put something out on Facebook the other day, and I commented on it. And I mean, I've known David for a little while, and great guy, but it was a picture of this mom who was looking up at her daughter, who was sitting at the corner of a swimming pool, and the daughter was supposedly the lead singer, getting all the attention. The mom was the audience saying, "Oh, baby, come on, don't, it's okay." Meanwhile, behind her, the son, who is, quote, the guitar player, bass player, and drummer, is almost drowning behind her in the pool. So, and that's what I told him. I told him then is like, yeah, and don't forget it. Don't forget it. Absolutely right. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, coming up in just a minute, we're going to talk about, you're going to hear Keith Plunkett tell you about what the Dirt Deacons do, the kind of music that they play, and the kind of places where you can go and hear them. That's coming up on the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You've got the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. And today you're spending some time with Keith Plunkett, who is a lead singer for the Dirt Deacons. We were just talking about lead singer stuff, and now I want to talk about the Dirt Deacons, though, because this is a group that is really, you talked about you were in some bands in the 90s when you were younger, but this one is gaining a lot of traction, and it's gotten to the point where you guys are recording your own stuff. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about what the Dirt Deacons do. What kind of music do you play?
Well, I mean, if I'm giving you the cliff notes, it's the something off our bio. It's 70s, 80s, and 90s, and some 2000s, and But we generally, I tend to think if you're looking for a description of genre, we tend to take standards from each one of those decades, and we put our own little spin on them. We play some Delbert McClinton. We play some Van Morrison. We were just off air. We're just talking about CCR, and we do some of that. In our earlier part of our sets that really goes over well. But the one thing I think we've all learned as musicians in the Brad and Bryce and the other Brad, we always say the other Brad, we kind of given him the nickname Slick. Brad Caraway's now playing bass with us, so we have a Brad guitar player and a Brad bass player. Anyway, I think what all of us have learned as musicians is you don't have to be the act that you are covering. You just have to be yourself in that moment and in that song. Find your space within that means something, and you can do some things emotionally with it that connects with an audience. And I think that's what we've done really well. But so, some of those songs I just named, we play some of those covers, but then. Also, you come forward a little bit into the 90s, we do some Lenny Kravitz, we do some stuff like that. And our last set gets a little heavy, we have some Led Zeppelin stuff we cover, yes, but even some Alice in Chains, and we do AC/DC stuff, which that's been a real thing that I've enjoyed in this second phase of being a musician in my life is I think maybe my vocal range and my abilities have caught up with what I really wanted to be doing when I was in my 20s, I can do a lot of those songs a lot better now than I could then, and I kind of understand a little bit vocally of how to reach those peaks and when not to push too hard. And, we played Golden Moon a few weeks ago, and up there you do 5-hour shows 2 nights in a row.
Ouch.
So with only 15-minute breaks between sets. So you're not, you're
doing 4 hours of music.
It's a workload. Yeah, absolutely. So you have to be careful in those instances not to push yourself too hard vocally, because you got another night coming up with, another 4 hours of music. And it's work.
You drinking honey tea with lemon and that kind of thing? You lubricating the vocal pipes?
I do some, but the one thing I have found with that it absolutely is true is if you don't drink any beer or any alcohol whatsoever, you keep your vocals in good shape, and they don't dry out, and you're able to stick with it and hit those notes when you need to.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That is something that I learned too. And I've had people come up and when I'm playing out, they offer me beer, and I say, I just don't do it on gigs.
Yeah. I have a kind of a routine where I may drink a beer or two after setup before we play, just to loosen up. But at that point on, for the rest of the night, it's all water. And I do, if I am having some issues, if we played like last year, going back 2 years, we were doing close to 60 shows a year, and then last year we did this long weekend where we had 3 shows that went across like 500 miles. It was just one festival, then up to a private show up in Hot Springs that was outdoors. Then we come back and we play in Brandon here again the following night after that. So it was one right after the other, and that'll put a strain on you. Especially with traveling and all of that.
Yeah, what are you trying to kill yourself? Right. Jeez.
So, yeah, there are instances where you show up and it's like you tell the waitress or whomever's your server, it's like, I need tea with lemon and honey. That's all I need. Stick it in the microwave, put a little heat on it. Let me loosen this stuff up and get going again. So, but our set really is set up to allow each of us in our own little way. I think we figured out ways that each song is a stair step toward getting a little bit, vocally. I'm not going to start off the first song and sing AC/DC, for instance, or something that
John Lennon always did twist and shout at the end.
Right, yeah, right, because he screams and loses his voice and it's over. So, but we build up to that. So, and working and being on the road in the truck by myself sometimes, that's could not be a better vocal rehearsal right there than that. So I get strange looks, but
are you guys? You have 2 guitar players or just one guitar player?
Just one guitar player.
So you're 4-piece.
No, 4-piece.
Okay.
We started off with 2 guitar players. We've had some member changes over the 3-4 years. Little people coming in and out. But we've settled back in on this, and again, it's Brad Chambly, Bryce, and myself. We always tend to gravitate, and no matter where we're playing or who we're playing with, somehow the 3 of us always end up gravitating back toward one another in whatever project we're working on. And probably for good reason, because we know each other. We're literally like brothers, I would say, even more so. And brothers fight, and brothers have disagreements and that kind of stuff, but then we pat each other on the back and keep on moving. So we've got a good working relationship. Brad Caraway, who's our bass player now, has come into that, and he has hit the ground running and working out real well with us. I think he's that dynamic. He understands that dynamic, and he fits in it very, very well. So
when you hire somebody who has not been in the band before, you're trying to find somebody, I assume, who's already been playing a similar repertoire, so that the parts are fairly easy to learn and to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brad Caraway's played with Alter Ego immediately before playing with us. He goes back, played with Crow and other bands. And Caraway, if you're listening to this, my absent-mindedness. I don't know any of the other bands right off the top of my head, but those 2 right off the top of my head, I know he has played with. But he's been playing for quite some time. I've seen the pictures of the young Brad Caraway with a bass in his hand. So he's been at it a while.
All right, coming up in just a minute, you're going to get to hear some new music from the Dirt Deacons and hear what they do, but it's not quite what they do when they're playing out and doing it live, but it is the heart of what they do, or the heart of what they want to do, and that is making original music. And that's coming up right here on the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host, and you've got Keith Plunkett in studio today talking about his work with the Dirt Deacons. He is the lead singer, and now, these days, getting to do some songwriting and recording. Keith, let's talk about going into the studio, because we talked during the first segment, if people are just now tuning in, about the old days when you were with some other bands and you guys were recording back in the day on analog tape, and now it's a different situation. How is it going into the studio to record these days as compared to then? Well,
the process for us was somewhat the same in that, we're still going to a location to do it. A lot of folks can do this, in their basement or their shack, if you will.
Yep, some of them do.
And they can do that. I mentioned in an earlier segment, I'm not a technical guy anyway, so a lot of that stuff, my eyes tend to glaze over talking about some of it. But what we recorded, "Good Day," this new single, at Holmes Junior. Well, Holmes Junior. I aged myself big time then.
Whoops.
Holmes Community College. But when I went to school there, and Bryce and Brad went to school there, it was Holmes Junior College, and so it was kind of interesting. We got to go back there. They've got a Mike Yates, good friend of ours. He's actually filled in on the bass. He did some of the bass work on the song "Good Day" and helped with some of that, as well as doing the production on that. He runs the entertainment division of he's over the choral stuff there at Holmes Community College, and he teaches a few courses on sound engineering and that kind of stuff up there. So they've got some new stuff there, and he invited us up to sit in and try recording up there. It had been the first time for the three of us together. I don't know how long for each one, Brad and Bryce, it had been since they had been in the studio, but for the three of us together, it had been quite a few years. So the process in terms of going somewhere to a studio, having a quote unquote session, that you do was somewhat the same. Of course, the technology is a lot different, but nobody asked me to do any of that, obviously, because that's not my forte. Mike handled all of that and did a beautiful job on this song. I think I mentioned the other night on another show that in terms of the process, we went in when you have to worry about the session time you've got coming up. You've got to worry about, okay, we're going to spend this much money at this studio. And we've been lucky enough to have friends that had studios in the past that we could sit in when they weren't booked and play around with stuff and do some stuff. But for the most part, when you go in with, okay, I've got this much money and this much time. I've got to get it all done within this much time. And that was not the case here. So we were able to take a song that was set up, but to continue to write it as we were in the studio. There were our first take on the song. We ended up going back the following session and changing up and putting in an entirely new bridge right in the middle of the song. Bryce came up with a weird time signature that he wanted to try, and it worked really, really well. Brad sat in the booth there and really worked out a lot of different little licks here and there, and some just little bitty things that were added into the song. So we tracked a lot more in this song to layer it some. And man, I loved it. I thought it came out beautifully, I thought. So, and we made decisions on the fly. That was the cool part about it. You're like, you've already written the song, you know the basic structure, but let's change some stuff. Basically, you come up with these ideas. Why don't we do this? And that kind of freedom in the studio, I loved that. I thought that was probably the coolest thing about recording now that we've never been able to do before.
You get to add some nuance.
Absolutely.
And make it just a little bit more interesting.
Well, and the ideas that you each have, you go in with a predetermined, all right, this is the way the song's going to be, but then you can bounce ideas off of each other and say, okay, hey, that sounded great. What if? And then so that gets somebody else's creative juices flowing. It's like, yeah, okay, and then I can add this. And so you get this layering effect. And at some point, we even had the conversation we were recording. It's like, you can't overdo it. We could just be here forever if we wanted to, writing one song. So let's, but what we came up with was great, and I'm looking forward. We've got some more songs that the three of us have written together and that Bryce and I have written with others over the past 25, 30 years that we're going to revisit coming up soon. We've got some new material that we started working on, some songs that Bryce plays keys a little bit, as well as the drums. So he had some ideas on some songs we started working on a few months ago, and we're even going to jump into doing some cover tunes and stuff, re-recording some cover tunes that we've played for years. So it's exciting to get in the studio in that kind of environment and work on those.
Well, let's see if we can call on the computer here to give us a bit of a sample of what you guys have been doing here with Good Day and the Dirt Deacons.
Satisfaction, don't feel it's really so relaxing. Can't say I'm looking for some action, seems so far away. Think I'm gonna need to change the station. Not enough, so I think I gotta make some. Quickly get so bothered and impatient, looking for the play. A good day for a long road, way past noon. A good night to watch for the rising moon. A good time to find something to see. Oh, a good day for me. A steering wheel where I can fall apart. A winding road to mend a broken heart. Got to go, got to find a start. A place that lets me be. Leave town, top down, find my ground. Wind and tunes will be the only sound. Spirit needs the time to come around. It gets all over me. A good day for a long road, way past noon. A good night to watch for the rising moon. A good time to find something to see. Oh, a good day for me. The scene's frequently changing. All dreams require some rearranging. All souls long for deep engaging. Take 'em where they ought to be. Gotta go, gotta know it happens slow. When it happens, it always corrects the flow. Figure out what is and ain't for sure. That's when I can say a good day for a long road, way past noon. Good night to watch for the
You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, and Keith Plunkett is here, and he has just previewed for you, if you haven't heard it yet, the new single "Good Day" by the Dirt Deacons. Keith, are people digging it whenever you play it out?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had the opportunity now to play it live a few times, and every time it's gone over very, very well. We played a private party recently, just a few weeks ago, and it really wasn't even on our set list. And so we were thinking, okay, covers. This is a private party. People want to, this is what we're here to do, but we had multiple requests from the audience to play your new single, and so we did. It's been going over really, really well. And the response on all the streaming platforms have been great. I watch Spotify in particular because that's the king daddy right now in terms of that, and it's easier to keep up with. They have two different things. You have the certain number of listens that's always added to that song, and you get over 1,000, and then you get a tally, so you know. And then you have a certain response rate, which is the number of listeners over the course of a 28-day period. So we're just over that period now with the release of this single, and those numbers are falling back a little bit, but not nearly as fast as I thought they were, and as they increase. So we hit a number well outside of what I thought we'd do on our first single, comparable to what our other contemporaries and people around us here in this market have released new tunes, and it's held its own pretty well. So that's one reason I'm really excited about getting back and getting some new releases out in the next couple of months.
That's what we call traction, right?
There, yeah, absolutely.
So who's doing the writing?
It's a joint effort. I mentioned earlier that we had some songs that we had written in the past that made it to tape, just, recorded while sitting in a jam room somewhere that never really went anywhere. We recorded some of them, but maybe not as happy with the product as we could be. And now with this new way that we've figured out of working in the studio and the resources we have available, we really feel like we can get in and take some of these songs and make them what we envisioned them to be when we first wrote them and began. Brad takes a huge writing responsibility, coming up with guitar lines and the riffs and the basic structure of the song. Bryce, obviously, he's kind of like the director behind the drums. He's the one, he's sitting behind us, but he is the one leading the show. That's the beauty of playing with Bryce Upshaw, is he knows how to tone a song down to the point where everybody on stage feels the song being toned down a little bit, and he's basically telling you quiet up, and then then he builds it back up, and it's it's this thing that
bringing a dynamic to it.
Very, very much bringing a dynamic to every song. He was, when we were younger, of course. He was still an incredible drummer back then, but back then it was all hair and double bass and lots of tom work, and just the rack set he had back in those days would have filled up a truck by itself. So playing back in those days was something. But he pares that down a little bit now, but still gets the best sound, and he's become a great jazz drummer. So there's some jazz influence in everything, and that helps with that dynamic stuff a lot. But Brad writes the riffs, and he's got a lot of them that are still untouched. Some he's played for us, and some that we haven't even heard, from what I understand. So the sky's the limit, I guess you would say, in terms of what we have available to us to be able to do in the future. And I think it's going to work out really well.
You mentioned keys very briefly. That kind of adds a different level of dynamic too. Whenever you're able to overdub keyboard parts, you can basically go anywhere you want to go with a song. Well,
and we just you don't want to overdo it because we don't play with keys live. So, but to thicken a song up and to add what we need at the right. And I think what happened too, especially with Good Day, is Mike had some keys come in there and put some stuff in there with that, and it showed us a little bit different way of playing the song, maybe. So when we played it live after recording it, it seemed to me to be much better than it was than when we were rehearsing it live before we recorded it. Obviously, so it helps shape the song a good bit by doing the in studio stuff and then coming back out and say, well, this is what we ended up with. Let's try it this way live. And like I said, live, it's gone over very, very well every time. And then when we play it, the downloads and the numbers jump up on our Spotify and other platforms and that kind of stuff. So,
where can people find information about the Dirt Deacons? Do you have a Dirt Deacons Facebook page?
Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. We have a TikTok page. We're on X, although we don't do very much on there. I find that X is just not as great a medium for music type stuff. Of course, the dirtdeacons.com is a website, and you can find all links and everything there. And you can, there's a section there which you can go to Good Day, the link there, and it gives you all the platforms. You can just click on that and listen. Bios there, got some video there, photos from now, 4 years worth of shows. So there's a lot there to sift through. So yeah, absolutely. Go to the dirtdeacons.com and you can parse out in any different direction you want to from there.
How do you promote a single in this day and age? When it's on Spotify and you're trying to get it around the world from right here in little old central Mississippi.
I think with this one, obviously being our first, we just took a stance of put it out there and see what happens. But I come from a PR background, long PR background, and I'm not comfortable with just putting it out there and hoping for the best. I'm gonna let people know about it. That's what you got to do. And so we pushed it a little bit through our normal efforts, our normal social media stuff and that kind of thing. But it got picked up. We had a radio show from the UK that actually played it as one of their new releases of the week over in the UK, and that I don't know how much that boosted our numbers because you never know because it was the first time. But I'm of the mind frame that you can't manage what you don't measure, so you got to take a look at those numbers and see how they're coming in, where they're coming from, to the best of your ability to do so. And then so the next time we'll have a little bit more of a plan, I think, of how to approach it. So I imagine it's going to change for every single release. So
okay. Well, look for the Dirt Deacons, and you said thedirtdeacons.com?
Thedirtdeacons.com.
All right. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you each week by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host. You've been hearing Keith Plunkett of the Dirt Deacons. Be sure to tune in next Friday right here on 103.9 WYAB, straight up at 9 o'clock. Catch the news and then catch the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB.